Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is NJ.com live on Facebook right now and YouTube. It is election season here in New Jersey. This is a major time for our state, with, of course, Election Day less than a week away. And we have more information now about early voter turnout in the state. It is looking like close to 1 million people in New Jersey have already cast their ballots in this election cycle. For more insight into what's been going on these last few days, we got Brent Johnson. He is a political reporter with NJ.com. I'm Natalie Paterson. I'm the video manager at NJ.com. And Brent, break it down for us. How does this, close to 1 million people, is that impressive, or is that pretty on brand for how Jersey goes in early voting?
No, it's impressive. We've seen early voting pick up in recent years, kind of over the last half decade. That it used to be everybody lined up on election day, and you had to find time in between work and everything. But now you can either cast a mail-in ballot about a month before election day, or you can vote in the final week in person. You can go to a polling place and actually go to a machine and vote. And we've seen these numbers increase in recent years, especially after last year's presidential election. And these numbers are sizable. 1 million voters in a state of 9 million people, not every one of whom votes. And so far, early returns show that Democrats are leading Republicans and doing a little bit better than they expected. Democrats feel very heartened by these numbers as Democrat Mikie Sherrill faces Republican Jack Ciattarelli for the governorship. Republicans, I've heard on the ground, have been hoping for a little bit better numbers. They want at least to be a little bit stronger, but they tend to vote more on election day anyway, and they hope they'll have a big election day turnout. But this is a close race and one to really watch. That I keep hearing from the insiders that it really is a jump ball, even though she is in the lead. She's the front runner. She's favored, but only by single digits.
Yeah, it's still a really close race. And can you just talk to me other, right? We've got Republican, Democrat, and other, and that is a sizable
Yeah.
number. What can happen with those voters?
Well, those voters are part of the reason we are considered a purple state these days. We tend to, in New Jersey, they tend to vote Democratic in federal elections, although in governor's races, they tend to go back and forth. We have Democrats replaced by Republicans and back and forth. Going back to 1961, the last time one party won the governor's office 3 times in a row was 1961, which was 3 years before the Beatles even appeared on Ed Sullivan,
It's
and
a different world.
a year before my beloved New York Mets even existed. So yeah, it was a really long time ago. So that favors the Republicans here. But the X factor, as with almost everything these days, is Donald Trump and whether people are going to push back against Trump or accept his presidency. Last year in the presidential race, Trump actually did much better than anyone thought he would. He lost New Jersey by double digits in his first 2 elections, and New Jersey is a Democratic state in federal elections. The last time a Republican candidate for president carried the state was 1988. I was 5 years old, and that was George H.W. Bush. So it's been a Democratic leading state, but Trump only lost by 6 points last year. So that has given Republicans a lot of hope that the state is turning purple, and we'll see how that turns out in this election.
And then break down the numbers even further here, because Republican, Democrat, that can seem really black and white here. But what exactly are we talking about when we see Republican 230,900,
Yes.
Democrat
This
449,000?
does not necessarily mean they voted Democrat or voted Republican. Republicans will be very quick to point that out, to say that you might see some Democrats here who voted Republican because they wanted to see some change after 8 years of Democratic rule. Whoever wins will replace Democratic Governor Phil Murphy, who can't run for a third straight term. So maybe there are some people who have been weathered by the Democratic rule and they voted for Republicans. Then again, on the other side, you may have some Republicans who voted Democratic because they don't like the first year of Donald Trump's presidency. This election is considered kind of an early referendum on Trump's presidency, and that he's kind of seeing how voters are feeling about Trump, especially heading into next year's midterms. So this don't necessarily mean that they voted for the color that they represent, but usually you tend to think that those numbers probably even out at some point. But again, that gray area is the big question that will largely determine whether the state stays in blue hands or flips red.
And this is only as of noon today. We still have
Yes,
several
yes.
more days of early voting, and then, of course, election day. And what do you see, more on election day? You see more Republicans coming out.
Yes, and that's what Donald Trump himself has said, that you can vote however you want, but it's probably better to vote in person. In fact, he held a telephone rally for Ciattarelli last week, and one of the things he said was, "You vote however you want, but New Jersey kind of has a sketchy reputation, even though there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud here or elsewhere." But he's saying, it's better to vote in person. So that's the hope. You hear Republicans saying they're a little concerned about these numbers, but they know this can turn on a dime on election day, and it really could go their way.
Let's take a look at the 2024, how New Jersey voted in 2024 in the presidential election. Can you just kind of talk us through, Brent, what we're seeing here?
Yeah, if you see that blue swath in the middle, that's really where the heavily populated cities are. That's where Camden, Trenton, New Brunswick, Paterson, Newark, Jersey City, which tends to favor blue candidates and tend to vote Democratic. So that's why you see that, and that's they carry the day in New Jersey largely because that's where a lot of people live. They're heavily populated, and then the other sides tend to be red because that's more suburban and rural areas. And if you drive through the shore or in Northwest Jersey, you'll see a lot of Donald Trump signs. So you may think, oh wow, this is a red state, but really that blue middle has kept it blue in past elections. But the question is, the suburbs are often swing areas that they could go either way. And though there are 800,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, there are a lot of unaffiliated voters. And the state really, if you put all those colors together, as my 4-year-old daughter Everly will tell you, that gets purple.
Yeah. Yeah. The 2021 governor's race, of course, that was Jack Ciattarelli and Democrat Phil Murphy. Were there any surprises in how New Jersey voted those years ago?
Yeah, that race was an interesting race. It was still in the middle of COVID. The thought was polls showed Phil Murphy up by 8 or 9 going into election day. None of us really thought that Ciattarelli really had a shot, and they didn't call it on election day. It was too close to call that night. They called it a full 24 hours later, and Murphy only won by 3 points. And so that was a real sign that, whoa, they didn't expect it to be that close. And again, it makes sense. We tend to go back and forth between both parties. And Murphy had some headwinds coming from COVID, and Joe Biden had just won the White House. Because usually whoever wins the White House the year before New Jersey's elections, the opposite party wins the governorship. And Murphy actually bucked that trend. It's curious to see whether that'll happen this time, because history shows that Trump's in office. That means Sherrill should win. But, who knows? Maybe Ciattarelli draws out enough Trump voters to help him.
Yeah. Tell me, so Trump's presence has been felt hugely in this race, even more so now as we kind of get to the finish line here. How is he helping and hurting both candidates, Sherrill and Ciattarelli, at this point?
That's a big question mark, because we're an off-year election, which means there's not a presidential race. So turnout is really critical. And it's a question of turning out low propensity voters who don't often vote as much if it's not a presidential year. The thought is Ciattarelli has to win the middle moderate voters who might be turned off by Trump, but he also can't afford to lose the MAGA voters who may not come out if Trump's in an election. So you see him kind of straddling the line down the stretch here, where he's talking about how he gave Trump an A grade during a debate, but he's also broken from Trump on a few things. And Sherrill's really driving home that he will be a Trump lackey, and that the state can't afford to have someone who's so close to Trump become president or become governor. And that you're seeing that it's basically a proxy war of Trump. And he's saying that she's going to be 4 more years of Murphy, and we can't have that either. So it's really a question. Does Trump bring out more voters to vote for Ciattarelli, or does he turn off the middle of the road voters, and how can he close the gap?
Yeah. Seeing a lot from both candidates on social media. Social media has played a huge role in this election cycle.
Very online.
Very online. Yes. A lot of activity, a lot of content creators talking about, their candidates and why they're supporting them. Other than flooding social media this week, where are Mikie, Sherrill, and Jack Ciattarelli this week? Where do you think they're going to be spending a lot of their time?
They literally are both on a bus. They have chartered a bus.
Not the same bus, probably.
Not the same bus. That would be a wonderful story.
That'd be wild.
I'd love to get on that bus. But they both have competing buses that are going up and down the state. She has been bringing in a bunch of national Democrats to help her. Pete Buttigieg is with her tomorrow. Josh Shapiro was with her over the weekend. Barack Obama is coming in to rally with her in Newark on Saturday. And he has just been, he's known as a campaign machine. He goes everywhere. His bus has been all over the state. And he brought Trump in, as I mentioned, for a telephone rally. Trump got on the phone to speak with voters, called Ciattarelli a special guy who's going to get your costs down. And he said that she had, despite her unusual name, that's really the only thing she has going for her. She's going to bring the state into a death spiral. So that happened. But he's not appearing with Trump in person, Ciattarelli, which probably might turn off some moderate voters if he did. So, but you're going to see them out there, and you're going to see their ads. If you watch Jeopardy, like it's in between Ken Jennings giving you questions, all you see is their ads.
And I keep getting text messages. I mean, I'm sure you are
Yeah.
too.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah.
mean, the campaign text messages, go do your early. I've got one the other day that was like actual video of the outside of my early voting place, which I thought was wild. Like, how
Yeah.
did you get this from Google Earth? So they're really pushing, vote, go and vote. How do
Yeah.
you think our turnout is going to be this year, though, in a non-presidential election year?
Better than it has been, maybe better than 4 years ago. But the problem is voting just in general over the last few decades has seen a downward trend. The days of when more than three-fourths of the state voted in the 1960 presidential election between JFK and Richard Nixon, that's been down. We've only seen gubernatorial races do in the 30s and 40s% turnout. So I think it'll be better than usual just because this is such a heated, personal, attack heavy race and Trump's in it and you're getting a brand new governor. It's an open seat. There are so many layers to this race and it's so fascinating. By far, of the 4 governors races I've covered for NJ.com and the Star Ledger and NJ Advanced Media, by far the most fascinating.
And definitely would have been a completely different race with no President Donald Trump in the White House. I mean, it would
Yeah.
have been put anyone else in the White House, it's a completely different race.
Yeah, and you could make the argument that if just because we're coming off 8 years of Phil Murphy, that if Donald Trump lost to Kamala Harris last year and it was President Harris and not President Trump, that Jack Ciattarelli might have a double-digit lead in the polls.
Yeah, really interesting. All right, I'm showing this the breakdown of Republican, Democrat, and other, the total voter turnout as of noon today. These are mail-in votes and in-person votes. You can see how this breaks down in terms of who's turned in their ballot already. We're talking close to 1 million people in New Jersey, but it's that other bubble, right? It's that gray other bubble that could really have a huge impact on this race. And Brent and I will actually be live with you on November 4th after the polls close at 8 o'clock. We will be bringing you results as they come in. All sorts of like very interesting insights. We're talking to politicians, content creators, pollsters. We've got a really cool mix of people. So, Brent, that'll be an interesting night.
Yeah, it's something completely new. We've never done it before, so it's exciting.
Yeah, and we're waiting anyway. We're waiting to find out who the next governor of New Jersey will be. So why not have a conversation while we wait? And mark it down. Live starts at 8 p.m. on November 4th after the polls close, and we'll be live on NJ.com's Facebook and NJ.com YouTube. Thanks, guys, and get out there and vote. Thanks, Brent.
Yep, thank you.